Okay, so what is evolutionary psychology? That is the underpinning of all of game. This is like the most technical part, or the most sort of like professorial part of this entire lecture that you're going to get, so stay tuned for it, but it is important, okay? Understand that our DNA is basically 98%, 99% the same as like monkey DNA, okay? We're essentially there, okay? There's very, very little difference. And so the things that we find attractive, the things that we respond to emotionally, and the degree to which we respond to them is not predicated on what makes sense in the 21st century at all. Okay, we've evolved technologically, we've evolved as a society, but our bodies and our instincts haven't. This is why people will get like murderously enraged because someone cuts them off in traffic, right? This is why someone will like will get in a fight with someone because they're stressed out over like their taxes, right? These are things that are not life and death issues. However, we are responding to them in life and death ways because that's what would have made sense in a survival sort of an environment, okay? Okay, so what is evolutionary psychology and what does it say? So basically, here's how evolution works. So you have a man, and his evolutionary success is based on how many kids he has, how many little men he has, and then more importantly, by how many grandchildren he has. That's really the indicator, because it's not just having kids, it's having kids that grow up to be adults and have their own kids, okay? And for a woman, I don't know if it's like, I'll draw a little female bathroom symbol, I don't know, friggin', I don't know. For a woman, it's the same thing. It's how many kids and how many grandkids, okay? Now here's the funny thing. For a man, what do you think is the most possible children a man could have? Any thoughts? Billions. Nobody's had that many, although I suppose it's, you know, if you just like went till your dick was raw every day. Yeah, Genghis Khan, basically they've done DNA sampling and every person in Asia has a little Genghis Khan DNA in them at this point, all right? So I think Genghis Khan had like 1,000 children or something like that on record. God knows how many bastards, right? And there's other dictators that have had like 1,000 and upwards of that. Okay, so a man, if he's highly, highly genetically successful, could sleep with and impregnate thousands of women. Okay, what is the maximum number of children a woman could have? 20? And that would be a stretch, literally. I don't know, but 20 is about that would be rough, right? Especially back in the day where having a kid meant that you might die. Right, when there weren't good hospitals, when a breached birth, you die. So yeah, 20 maybe. More likely maybe like 10, something like that on the high end. And most women, maybe like 2 or 3, okay? So what you're looking at here is, if you treat this as a success, how many grandchildren you have, and specifically how many kids you have, a man who's greatly successful has a huge upside. A woman who's wildly successful, their upside is limited, okay? On the other end of things, what percentage of men throughout history do you think died without ever having kids? A lot. Give me a number. 20%. 20%? That's a lot? Okay.
I bet you have it, right? Almost half.
I would say more like 80.
80? Whoa.
More like 80, okay? That's crazy, right? That sounds insane, but it's true, because here's what's happening. Imagine a Genghis Khan's having 1,000 kids. That's 1,000 women who are having Genghis Khan's kids. That's 999 men that are left unpaired with a woman, in theory, if it was all equally paired in the rest of society, right? And so what ends up happening is the sort of alpha males, the guys who have a lot of resource, a lot of reproductive capacity, a lot of these things that attract women, or a lot of power and ability to rape and pillage even back in the day, right? They have lots and lots and lots of wives, lots of women, lots of children. Then a lot of men have none. The most extreme example of this, there was actually a society, I think it was either like an Aztec or Incan society. And basically they had 1% of the population was in the royal family. That population had all the children. If you had sex and you were not a royal, as a man, and you were not a royal family member, that was an offense punishable by death to you and your entire family. So in that society, 1% of the men were having all the children, okay? Now that's an extreme example, but that's kind of how it's been throughout history, Okay? So that leads us to a few conclusions. Number one, women, if they're looking for what's an attractive man, what's a genetically viable man, they're looking for the top few percent. They're not looking for the average, because the average man died childless, right? So if you're looking for what is an attractive, reproductively capable man, they're not looking for average. That's number one. Number two, which is kind of interesting, is that men are designed to take risks far more than women are, okay? Because if a woman takes a risk of death to get with a slightly better man, she might have her kids have a few more kids or something like that, but she was gonna have kids anyway. Basically, any fertile woman in ancient society is gonna have some man that's decent. She's gonna get pregnant, she's gonna have the kids raised, she'll have a few kids. If she gets with a slightly better man, maybe she has an extra kid because she's healthier longer, or maybe her kids have a few more kids on average, but it's not a huge difference, okay? So a woman has very little reason to risk dying and becoming a zero offspring, like genetic failure, to have a little more genetic success. But if the average man is having 0 kids anyway, his genetic output, his genetic sort of equation, is that he has no downside for taking risk, right? He was already gonna fail. Right? And if you're in that Aztec Incan society where 99% are not going to mate, if you have a chance to get in that royal family and it's a risk of death to get there, you're already getting 0. Like you're already going to have 0 kids genetically. Right? If you succeed, you're going to have hundreds of kids. If you fail, you're still having 0. You may as well risk it. All right? So men are designed to be much more willing to take risks than women are. Women are designed to be very, very risk averse. And that's going to come up many, many times throughout our discussion, especially when we get to female psychology and those kind of things. Okay? So that's very, very important. Second thing to realize in terms of evolutionary psychology is what are we evolving against? Okay? Most people think of evolution and the word that comes to mind is what? Survival of the fittest. Right? Survival of the fittest. Well, as human beings, we've been the fittest as a species so long that it's no longer really about survival anymore. What it really is about replication. And that's what evolution is, survival and replication. Okay? And so